Okay, here we go. Here we go. Rockfin, are you ready? Are you ready? Rockfin, are you ready? Are you ready? Rockfin, are you ready? Come on, Rockfin. Jeez. All right, there we go. Woohoo!
Doobie-doobie-doo. 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 I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. Doobie-doobie-doo. 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 I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. Doobie-doobie-doo. 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 I'm your host, sabrinasalvati.
All right. Happy Tuesday, guys. Welcome to Sabs podcast. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. If you are new, I want to let you know that Sabs podcast is a part of Revolutionary Blackout Network. You can catch me there on Tuesdays, actually every other Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and you can catch me here on Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and Sunday. Quick shout out to everyone watching on YouTube, Rockfin, and Twitter. And hello, guys. I hope you had a wonderful weekend. Just want to give quick shout outs to people in the chat and we'll get started. Shout out to Miguel, says happy Tuesday. Greetings, Hannah G says I'm here for it. What's going on? Angela, who's a Sabby member, says greetings, Sabby in chat. Hunkering down for a potential winter storm or hunkering down for a bunch of hype. Either way, I'm hunkering down and watching Sabby. Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, it snowed here yesterday. Shout out to Lawrence, who's also a Sabby member, says doobie doobie door 2024. Greetings, Robin, says Sabby Sabs is must view YouTube. Let's do this. Let's do it, Robin. Shout out to Larez, says sup, Sabrina, Eric, and Sabby fam. Hope everybody had a good weekend. LOL, Sabrina putting the for focus on children. Oh, yeah, that's an interesting story. Shout out to the Jammin, says, greetings, Anthony sends a smile. What's going on, Delthea, who's a Sabby member, says, hello, all you beautiful people. Shout out to Sun Moon, says, Sabby, when I saw Robbie and Batya's segment, I instantly was annoyed. Those two couldn't be more disconnected from working in poor America. People are tired of false promises and corrupt politicians. Yeah, so Lucy is actually going to be on at 8:30 to discuss that and discuss her experience. So we'll get into that. Shout out to Gamer, says hello. Greetings, Steven, says happy Tuesday, everyone. Now smash that like button and share. Go ahead and do that, guys. Shout out to Mark, says Sabby, I feel bad about Bree. Before this, she was always right on the money. We can talk, like, if you guys want to, we can talk a little bit about that on call-in tonight. I'm not going to get into that on this show. I mean, I don't really, I guess I don't really, I have a difference of opinion. I will put it that way in reference to, you know, what's going on. I guess I'm not as bothered as some others are. Shout out to Kill Your Gorgie, says doobie doobie doo. Greetings, Mastermind, says hello, fam. Shout out to Notori, sends fire. Greetings, Rick, says hey, y'all. You guys remember that song? Hey, oh no, it was hey, ya. Hey, ya. Shake it, shake it, shake it, shake it. Shake it like a Polaroid picture. Shout out to Eric, who's a Sabby member, says, all right, Tuesday, here we go. Greetings, Eric says, oh boy, we are talking about my idiot of a governor again. They don't pay us enough to deal with his stupidity and grandstanding. We're going to talk about that, Eric. Greetings, Janine says, we're ready, Sabby, let's get it. Shout out to Wary, says, hey, everybody. Greetings, Nancy. Gives a shout out there to Gamer. Gamer, I told you you're always really popular in the chat. I told ya. Shout out to Ilhasa2 says, hey, greetings, Creative Experiment says Elon Musk hasn't saved us yet. No. Shout out to Steve says, hello, everybody. Greetings, Old Man Barker says, all. Shout out to Fontaine says, Sabby. Greetings, Kush Bosch says, hi, Sabby. Shout out to Dabby Dabs, gives another shout out to Gamer. I told you, Gamer, you're popular in the chat. All right, let's go ahead and get into it. I do have one story I want to cover before Lucy comes on at 8:30. So let's go ahead and get into that. Quick shout out to everyone who is a Sabby patron. Thank you guys so much for your support. Again, I really do appreciate it. If you are interested in being a Sabby patron, I have 5 categories: members, Sabbies, Sabrinators, Sabsters, and of course, the ultimate. All of their names are listed here. You can also see their names scrolling across the bottom of the screen. Coo-doo-coo! Thank you guys so much. And I want to give a big shout out to a new Sabby patron, Lydia Maniatis. Shout out to Libya. Over here, we call them newbies. Thank you guys so much for all of your support. Now, what are we talking about tonight? We have some interesting stories. I'm going to go ahead and share that thumbnail for you so we can get right into it. Ain't nothing to it but to do it. Give it to me one more time. All right, tonight we are discussing Ron DeSantis and Nina Turner CRT. I have a lot to say about that as someone who is a former educator. So we're going to get into that discussion. I'm also going to discuss Robbie Sove. I think it's Sove or Solve. How do you pronounce Robbie's last name? Sove. Robbie Sove and Batya. Civility politics. We're going to have a discussion with Lucy about her experience at AOC's Town Hall and to get an idea of how politicians should be approached, if there should be some type of civility there. We're going to talk about that. And they had that segment on Rising. I'm also going to discuss Boston public school teachers wronged. What has happened to teachers that teach for Boston public schools? I think some of you are going to be pretty livid when you hear that story, especially if you are an educator. Thank you so much, Swift. His name is pronounced Suave. Thank you so much for that. Thank you. But first and foremost, we're going to go ahead and dive into 3 more of those ballot initiatives for Louisiana. I told you guys before, Louisiana has 11, so I'm doing them bit by bit. I can't do 11 all in one night. I just can't. All right. So Louisiana ballot initiatives. We are on number 4. Actually, no, this is number 5. Louisiana Amendment 4, waiving water charges measure. A yes vote supported allowing local governments to waive water charges for customers if water is lost due to water delivery infrastructure damages that were not caused by the customer's actions or the customer's failure to act. So we have not had a ballot initiative like this yet out of all the states I've gone through so far. So this one is different. Now, this initiative did pass by 74.95%. And who supported it? State Representative Jeremy Lacombe, he supported it. Who opposed it? Ballotpedia did not identify committees, organizations, or individuals opposing the amendment. Constitutional restrictions and exceptions for use of public funds. Now, this goes on to say that Section 14 of Article 7 of the Louisiana Constitution prohibits the state or any local government from loaning, pledging, or donating its funds, credit, property, or things of value to any person, organization, person, association, or corporation, though it provides certain exceptions. The exceptions allow the state and local government to use public funds for the following purposes: social welfare programs, pension and insurance programs for public employees, issuing bonds as provided by law, returning property and minimal rights to a previous owner after the property was expropriated, acquiring stock by a higher education institution in exchange for intellectual property, donating abandoned or blighted property to a non-profit organization for renovation and maintenance, waiving any tax, interest, penalty, or other charges on blighted property for an owner who sells their property for less than appraised value, and for purchasers who plan to renovate the property, donating asphalt removed from state highways and roads from the state to local governments, investing in a portion of Rockefeller Wildlife Refuge Trust and Protection Fund and the Russell Sage or Marsh Island Refuge Fund in stocks, investing a portion or permanently endowed college or university funds in stocks, investing a portion of the Medicaid Trust Fund for the elderly in equities, investing public funds for a state infrastructure bank to be used for transportation projects, and donating or using public equipment or personnel to another political subdivision under a written agreement. Moving on to the next one, Louisiana Amendment 5, adjustment of ad valorem tax rates measure. A yes vote supported providing that ad valorem tax rates can be increased by a 2/3 vote of a taxing authority up to the maximum rate allowed by the Constitution until the authorized rate expires rather than current law, which provides an increase up to the maximum authorized rate in effect the prior year. This measure failed. This failed by 57.18%. How were property taxes collected in Louisiana? This is interesting. So this is another one. I don't know how many states we've gone through so far that had some type of ballot measure that reflected property taxes. So I don't know what was going on in 2022, but property taxes was a hot button item. So how are they collected in Louisiana? Property taxes are collected by Louisiana counties and are levied in mileage rates, also known as mills. A mill is 1/10 of 1%. In Louisiana, properties are assessed at 10% of fair market value. The homestead exemption in Louisiana exempts the first $7,500 of assessed value from property taxes. Disabled veterans with a 100% disability rating may receive an additional $7,500 exemption, meaning the first $15,000 of their property's assessed value is exempt from property taxes. As of 2021, the average mill levy across Louisiana counties was 108 mills. As of 2021, the median annual property tax payment in Louisiana was $919. The national median property tax payment was $2,578 in 2021. So Louisiana, it seems like the property taxes in Louisiana are fairly low when you compare it to the national median. $919 compared to $2,578. So pretty. Gamer said Louisiana is the deep South. That's true. People do refer to that as the deep South. That is true. Property taxes for oh boy, property taxes. Okay, let's move on here. What would Amendment 5 have done? Going into the election, I'm sorry, I can't see tonight. Here we go. Going into the election, the state constitution allowing taxing authorities by 2/3 vote to increase ad valorem property tax mileage rates without voter approval up to the maximum authorized rate in effect the prior year. The amendment would have provided the ad valorem tax rates can be increased by a 2/3 vote of taxing authority and without voter approval up to the maximum rate allowed by the Constitution until the authorized rate expires. By removing language in the state constitution that caps a local jurisdiction's maximum tax rate to the prior year's rate. A local jurisdiction could have set a tax rate that is lower than the state's maximum rate and subsequently increased it to the state's maximum rate with a 2/3 vote. And this piece here is important as well. Mileage rates are rendered in mils. A mil is 1/10 of 1%. So for example, a 27 mil property tax rate would be equivalent to 2.7%. Property tax liability is determined by applying the mileage rate to the taxable value of the property. There's a lot going on there. Now, who supported it? These are the state representatives and senators that supported it: Gary Smith Jr., Ryan Barak, Les Farnham, Jason Hughes, Wayne McMeehan, Buddy Mincy Jr., Joseph Orgeron, and Mark Wright. If any of you are listening and you're in the chat and you are in Louisiana, give me a shout out. And no one seemed to oppose it. Again, when you're looking at campaign finance here, there was no money put towards this ballot measure to support it or oppose it. Moving along. Louisiana Amendment number 6. Limit on assessed value increase of reappraised property in Orleans Parish measure. A yes vote supported limiting the increase in the assessed value of residential property in Orleans Parish to 10% of the property's assessed value from the prior year beginning in 2023. What would this amendment have done? So this one failed by 50.27%. But what would it have done? The amendment would have limited the increase in the assessed value of residential property for which the owner is receiving a homestead exemption in Orleans Parish to 10% of the property's assessed value from the prior year. The effective date of the amendment was set to be January 1st, 2023, if the amendment was approved by voters, which it was not. The Orleans Parish Assessor's Office estimated that Orleans Parish had approximately 7,021 properties receiving a homestead exemption that had an assessed value above 10% of the property's assessed value from the previous year. The amendment included a provision stating that the revenue loss to the Orleans Parish could not create additional taxes for other taxpayers in the parish. The amendment would not have applied to the transfer or the conveyance of properties for which property taxes would have been based on fair market value after the transfer. Who supported this measure? Representatives Stephanie Hilferty, Mandy Landry, and Matthew Willard. Individuals: Errol Williams, who is the Orleans Parish assessor. So New Orleans has some pretty interesting ones here. And we're going to do one more. I think I have time to do one more before Lucy comes on. Louisiana Amendment number 7. Remove involuntary servitude as punishment for a crime from Constitution measure. A yes vote supported removing language from the state constitution that allows involuntary servitude as punishment for a crime, and adding language to say that the section of the Constitution prohibiting slavery and involuntary servitude does not apply to the otherwise lawful administration of criminal justice. This measure was defeated by 60.85%. Now, who supported this? Abolish Slavery National Network, End the Exception, Policy Films LLC. Here are some of the arguments here. I'm just going to read one of them. I think this one's important to hear. Vote yes on 7 coalition. The language on your ballot is misleading. It states, do you support an amendment to prohibit the use of involuntary servitude except as it applies to the otherwise lawful administration of criminal justice? Do not be confused by this, as we are convinced that the language, the otherwise lawful activity of the criminal justice system in place of except, does not lead to an expansion of slavery. This amendment is only the first step in dismantling this aspect of what we consider an extremely predatory system. As things currently stand, everyone sentenced to hard labor is transported back into bondage. And even then, some of those in jail pre-trial are enslaved as well. It gets no worse than this. Vote yes on 7. Now, who opposed it? State Representative Edmund Jordan. Organizations Council for a Better Louisiana, Louisiana House Democrats, Louisiana Legislative Black Caucus. And here's one of the arguments. The way that the ballot language is stated is confusing. Let me pop out for just a second. I want to say something here because this happens often with ballot initiatives. It is not uncommon with ballot measures that the language of the measure can be confusing to voters. This has happened before here in Massachusetts when we had ranked choice voting as a measure on the ballot for 2020. The language was confusing. And because the language was confusing, people voted against it because they didn't want to vote for it and not really understanding what they were voting for. Steve said they do the same thing here in California, confusing, misleading language. Yes. And when this happens, you get nowhere, because if people can't understand the question, then what do you expect them to do, right? So they're pointing this out here in one of the arguments, and I just wanted to reference the fact that we had that same problem here in Massachusetts, where people just didn't understand the question. So that's why ranked choice voting didn't pass here, to be honest with you. So it goes on to say that other states have similar constitutional provisions. As of 2022, Louisiana, along with Alabama, California, Georgia, Iowa, Kansas, Michigan, North Carolina, and Ohio, included constitutional provisions permitting involuntary servitude, but not slavery as a criminal punishment. Arkansas, Indiana, Kentucky, Minnesota, Mississippi, Nevada, North Dakota, Oregon, Tennessee, and Wisconsin had constitutions that included provisions prohibiting enslavement and involuntary servitude, but with an exception for criminal punishments. These constitutional provisions were added to state constitutions in their original forms from 1850 to the 1890s. One state, Vermont, had a constitutional provision permitting involuntary servitude to pay a debt, damage, fine, or cost. Voters in 3 states, Colorado, which was 2018, Utah 2020, Nebraska in 2020, have approved constitutional amendments to remove language that allowed the use of slavery and involuntary servitude as criminal punishments. In 2022, voters in Alabama, Oregon, Tennessee, and Vermont decided on similar amendments. So here's a note here from Roger Meadows. He said the first link goes into further details. So let me just click on this for just a second, where it says 4 states voted to abolish slavery, but not Louisiana. So I don't know if a lot of people knew about this, but yes, even in 2023, there were states that technically, according to their constitution, had not fully abolished slavery. That's right. So the reason why, I just want to point this out here, Louisiana voted to keep the slavery exception after the legislator who had sponsored the ballot initiative turned against it. Edmund Jordan said that he had realized that the measure could have inadvertently expanded slavery. So you see, this is why the language is very important when you're doing these types of ballot measures. So that is Louisiana. We will continue with Louisiana because, like I said, it's long. It is long. We'll continue with Louisiana on Thursday. Thank you for the comments from Rockfin Eric. Roger says, whoa, Sabby, I missed that one for Amendment 4. That says investing public funds for a state infrastructure bank to be used for transportation projects. Thank you so much for that. Oh, he said, that's huge. My bad. Yeah. Shout out to Colin, says happy Tuesday. Carrie says prison is only profitable because of free labor. That's right. And screw Google. In New Orleans, they charge property tax based on the width of your house on the street. So people build long, skinny houses. They are called shotgun style since they usually have two sides. That's true. I remember reading about that. I still haven't been to New Orleans, but I remember reading that about housing in New Orleans. Okay, and I think Lucy is here. Lucy, give me a thumbs up whenever you are ready. All right. Okay. All right, guys, my special guest tonight is Lucy. She's an activist. You've seen her on here before. You've also seen a pretty viral video of her recently, if you're on Twitter, or if you saw this Rising clip that we're going to go through tonight. I also worked with Lucy when we went to Camp Dada like last year. So this is someone who's truly passionate about the issues that they're fighting for. And Lucy is also a part of Indie News Network and has a show called Blue Moon Red Wine. Welcome back, Lucy.
Thank you, Sabby.
Okay, so Lucy, like we played the video on here and other people have gone through the video as well with your appearance at AOC's Town Hall. But we'd like to get the backstory because I want people to understand like how these events actually operate. So can you walk us through the events that day? Like what happened when you got there? And I know Roger Meadows was with you too.
Yeah, so I've been to two AOC town halls. One was like when she was first getting elected. And it was like right after she was like introducing the whole Green New Deal thing back in 2018. And she was pretending to be like woman of the people. And at the time, I still actually supported her. That's why I went. It was interesting because the environment was completely different. At the first town hall, there were some young people from the neighborhood that were doing a poetry reading. There was food. It really seemed like a popular meeting. Just like and then in this one, there were only older constituents there. Some of them seemed to be handing in pre-written questions. I'm not really sure. That was like my general sense. Or they make you, as you said in your previous show, write down your questions. Yeah. And then they only take the softball questions. But mainly it was like AOC in the front doing this extremely long PowerPoint that was basically like full of Democrat propaganda. And she talked for like an hour. And then the Q&A was like 10 minutes. And they only took a few questions and then they cut it off. There were at least like 10 people still waiting to ask their question. So at the very end, when I realized that this was their strategy to have a very long PowerPoint presentation and then have a very short Q&A, and then they cut you off and then you got to go. So, like this whole civility thing is ridiculous because they act like we are living in some kind of democratic society, like Hill Rising, the people on Hill Rising still believe this, when in reality, it's pre-scripted. Some of the constituents might be pre-scripted too. They only take the softball questions and they won't take any of the spicy questions, right? They're not even going to entertain that. And then you got to go. So that's basically how these town halls are. And in AOC's town hall specifically, it's actually full of feds. Like you could see it in the video. There's like one guy kind of indicating her on what to say. You can see him in the front in Lewis's video. And then there's like these preppy thugs all over the place and cops. Like this is not the kind of democratic thing where where you even have time to civilly make a point, or even show any kind of like nuance in your opinions. Like, you try getting nuance in your opinions out in a 10-second window. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, when
I just want to jump in here for a second to explain to people, even if you remember the town halls that we watched for the 2020 election of Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, Joe Biden, all those town halls, and they make it seem like they're calling on someone in the audience. I'm starting to lose some of my letters here, Lucy. I've lived in Boston for too long, but I almost said audience. But anywho, they make it seem like they're calling on that person in the audience. Those questions have already been submitted before the town hall, and they've already been pre-selected. So they already know what questions they're going to respond to. A lot of people don't realize that if you've never been to those events, and if you're only watching mainstream media.
Exactly. Yeah, people have no idea. And then the other thing that was really funny is that they said that they were going to have interpretation, and I assumed that they would have Spanish, right? Because it's, in that area, it's actually more African Americans, but in the district in general, it's like 60% Hispanic, so usually they have Spanish translation. No, when they said interpretation, it was for the deaf. So, I was just like, what is this? I don't understand. I'm sure there's some deaf people in the audience, but that's not like the majority need in that district. So it was just so funny. So basically the thing I said was the only comprehensible thing to some of the people in that town hall who mostly speak Spanish than the entire town hall. So, my intention was actually not to get on Hill Rising. It was for it to be shared on Twitter among the Spanish speaking constituents. Maybe I thought that it might get shared a little bit on Twitter in Spanish. That was my hope. But the other reason I did it in Spanish is because AOC is actually not very good at Spanish, but she tries to pretend that she is, because she really does play a lot with identity politics. So, our district, it's very diverse, and she was very careful when she was getting elected about not playing identity politics, because there's lots of different kinds of people in our area. There's white and black and brown, there's everything. There's Eastern Europeans and African Americans, and there's Puerto Ricans and people from other parts of Latin America, South Asia, Arabs. It's so diverse that you cannot play identity politics in our district because it just really doesn't work. And then she got into Congress, and she's giving this impression that she'll put out phrases that are very popular with the Puerto Rican community all the time on social media. You know what I mean? She does this, and there's nothing wrong with it, but people are just figuring out, oh, she doesn't really speak Spanish. She doesn't really understand what's going on. And because I knew that it would take her a little time to catch on, that's what allowed me to talk for so long. Because otherwise, if the preppy guy, the tall one beside me, had understood what I was saying, I would have gotten kicked out way before even telling people that we were signing people outside to vote independent. So that's why I did that.
Yeah, that was smart. So the Hill Rising actually commented about Lucy's appearance here. We're going to walk through this. I'm going to pause here and there, and I want to get your take on some of this, Lucy, but here we go. Civility politics.
At Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's constituent town hall on Friday, audience member Lucy Cann stood up and called the Congress.
I got to pause right off the bat. I thought this town hall took place on Saturday.
Yeah, it was on Saturday.
Okay. So see, the information isn't even correct. And this is not I'm not trying to nitpick, so to speak, but it's just there were a couple of things in this segment that they did not get right. And that's why I think, and I still stand by this, and I've been on Rising a couple of times, but I still stand by this. I think the correct thing to do would have been to bring Lucy on. because they're trying to figure out what Lucy was trying to do instead of just bringing her on and having Lucy explain it from her own perspective. But we'll get into it.
Woman from New York out on her support of funding the war in Ukraine. Let's watch that.
Hace 40 años que no hay una ley de amnistía en este país, ¿ok? Todavía no hay una ley de amnistía en este país. Y el Partido Demócrata mandó $100 billones a nazis en Ucrania, que esta señora votó para eso. En este país necesitamos un tercer partido al estilo de AMLO en México y Petro en Colombia y Boric en Chile. El Partido Demócrata no está haciendo nada por nosotros. Nosotros nos estamos registrando independiente porque el Partido Demócrata no hace nada por nosotros. No, señora, no. Necesitamos registrarnos independientes. Yo voy a estar afuera registrando a la gente independiente.
So this is the part here, Lucy, where you were saying, like, for people wondering, like, you know, why was it in Spanish? This is what Lucy's saying. Like, this is why Lucy was able to talk for as long as you were able to talk for, because otherwise I think they would have started to cut you off when you mentioned the funding for Ukraine. What do you think?
I mean, pretty much, because a lot of her staff, like the security, a lot of them did not speak Spanish as much as the actual constituents, like the audience. And then also a lot of her staff doesn't speak very well. There's like various levels of fluency, you know, but I'm very fluent. So I knew that if I spoke very fast, it would get shared on social media so that other people in our district that don't go to these town halls might maybe see it. That was the entire point. So, you know, and like I love shows like RBN and stuff, but to be very honest, like a lot of people in my area, they speak other languages, you know, they speak Spanish or Arabic or Bengali, whatever. So it would be great if this independent message started to get shared in other languages. Because otherwise people don't even find out about this funding to Ukraine stuff. They don't even find out about it. So it really was a strategy. And then people will say like, oh, this was a stunt. Listen, if I can get people to talk about amnesty, it's now a topic on independent media, this amnesty law. And the Hill Rising, they didn't even mention that at all. The fact that I talked about immigration amnesty. And I think people don't even realize that amnesty that Reagan passed in 1986, it's actually what enables people to apply for citizenship. For a lot of job categories, there is no immigration process. Like there's an immigration process for middle-class professionals, or in some cases, there's like a visa lottery, or if you get married to someone, things like that. But for the majority of restaurant workers in this country, construction workers, it really is a South-North immigration which there is no immigration process. That's why there are so many illegal immigrants in this country. So in order to solve that problem, you need a legal process. And we don't have a legal process for entire subsectors of the economy right now. People that work in meatpacking, restaurants, construction workers. So they can either make a category for those kinds of jobs, you know, like otherwise we're going to keep having loads of illegal immigration. They need to have a system for it. And they don't, because our immigration system is very classist. Like my husband, for example, he's an engineer. It wasn't as hard for him as for other people to apply for citizenship. But if you're a restaurant worker, a construction worker, you know, the people I know that are nannies or babysitters, home healthcare workers, all kinds of things, you know, there really is no process for a lot of these people. So it's not true that there's a legal process for immigration right now for all job categories. This just doesn't work that way.
It's 100% true. And a lot of my students were international students, and there were some of them that honestly, depending on what country they were coming from, we didn't even know if they were going to be able to get here in time for orientation. If we had students coming from Iran, like it was really taking a risk because there was no guarantee, because their visa process It's so difficult just to get them here, even though they're students, because of the country that they're coming from. So that's another thing too. Depending on which country you come from can also affect how long this process takes. But I'll go on here.
Why does she gotta leave? She's addressing her government for redress of grievance.
There are many ways to address that. No.
We're gonna go. She's
In a new $2.5 billion aid package, the U.S. has sent 90 Stryker combat vehicles and an additional 59 Bradley fighting vehicles to Ukraine, as well as hundreds of thousands of rounds of ammunition, but not tanks.
According to the AP, Germany said it will not send its own Leopard tanks to Ukraine unless the U.S. sends the Abrams. The United States said that the Abrams tank would not be a good fit for the current fight because of its frequent maintenance and fueling needs. South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham said he's tired of the SHIT show and that the U.S. and Germany should send tanks to Ukraine as, quote, the world order is at stake. So, Robbie, my radar is a little bit about this tank question. I will say I feel very conflicted about these sort of AOC Town Hall videos. It seems now to become like this. It's almost a meme now. People will go to try and embarrass and humiliate her by disrupting the town hall. Now, of course, constituents.
I just want to pause there for a second. Isn't that what AOC said that protesters were supposed to do, Lucy? Isn't that what AOC said when she first started running, that they were supposed to disrupt?
I mean, that's exactly what she said. And she really gave a mistaken appearance to her constituents by having like her initial town halls be like this assortment, this like look like a community meeting, and the town halls now they're like a nest of security. You know, the environment drastically changed in 4 years. Like this woman Batya, I don't know where she lives. I think I like Googled her after I saw this segment, and she lives in New York. But you know, she's so concerned about the fact that I was improper, as if there's a polite venue where you can talk about these things. There isn't. And
right.
If she thinks it's exasperating and she says, oh, it's a little bit of a stunt. But who's sharing the stunt? She's sharing it. So if she doesn't want to pay attention to these stupid stunts, then she shouldn't share them. You know, like I feel like she's telling on herself right there. You know, she could have, I've been on Twitter, YouTube for at least a year. She could have reached out to people to ask their opinion about any other thing. But the only time I've ever been gotten on Hill Rising is due to this stupid stunt. And because of that, I think more people should go to these town halls, not AOC, whoever represents your area, that's accessible to you. You should go to their town hall, go with a friend, call them out and take a video and share it on social media and register people independent. Because
That's
the problem
right.
is, yeah.
That's one of the things that you guys were doing also. Like you were telling people, I will be registering people independent outside. So I think this was another thing I brought up, like, which I don't think they mentioned that in this segment. It wasn't just like you guys just showed up there and started heckling people. You actually had an action to follow up after the fact. Like, okay, these are the problems with what you are doing, Congresswoman. And this is what the action that we are going to take to try to move things in a different direction. And they don't mention, I don't think they mentioned, I watched this twice. I don't think they said that, but we'll see. But I think that piece was very important for people to hear.
Have a right to speak back to their congressperson, but this particular woman was, registering people for an independent party. Right. And so when she left, she said, meet me outside, I'll register you. The Democrats and the Republicans are both terrible. And, much as I agree that the Democrats and the Republicans leave much to be desired, much as I find, Representative Ocasio-Cortez's, stance on funding to Ukraine to be the wrong one, I am a little bit getting tired of this, who can humiliate her the most. I mean, come on, guys. Like, she's a congresswoman. I'm sure she's doing her best. I don't know.
How does she know that AOC is doing her best? And why is she getting tired of it? So far, she agreed with what you said. She agreed that She doesn't approve of AOC, approving the funding, the billions of dollars funding to Ukraine. So she agreed with that statement. She also agreed that both parties are problematic. So why is she getting tired of people confronting AOC? And then she goes, I'm sure she's doing her best. How does she know if AOC is doing her best? Batya's not in Congress.
I mean, she's not in Congress. And to be very honest, there is a reason. I do think people show up at AOC's protests. Why? Because they do think some people do think that it'll get more attention, which is, you're right. If you live in the area, whatever. I am actually one of her constituents. I live in the area and I volunteered for her in 2018 and she hasn't done anything that she said that she was going to do at all. And I think I'm really actually following the Roger Meadows because I think I've seen a lot of these third parties pop up and I think Roger Meadows has very good strategy. And his idea is to register independent, which isn't the independent party. It's no party. It's to not register, basically unregister from all parties. And a lot of us are still registered Democrat just because we have an unregistered Democrat. I was like that actually for many years. Yep. So basically it's just a way of reversing the damage that Bernie did and saying, listen, we're here because we might mentally be thinking, oh, we're independent. But the Democrats, they haven't seen us unregistered. No, I'm unregistering. So showing up at a town hall, telling them that we are registering independent, standing outside and talking to people in the area that we were registering independent. And I'd like to, not right now because I'm a little busy with work and stuff, but I'd like to eventually maybe gather some donations or mutual aid and maybe pay off some food trucks or street vendors or whatever and register people independent right there on the street or on the subway, whatever. So, I think it could be something that would resemble tabling, the way people did during the Bernie campaign that you only have to do for 5-10 minutes, 2 hours, however much time you have. But we have to start figuring out a way to do that because otherwise we're not going to get anywhere. We could think internally that we are tired of this Democratic Party, but when you're just doing your own thing and you're mentally tired, you haven't told them. You haven't showed up and told them.
That's right. You have to actually change the registration. Let's go on because there's more here.
I agree with her about much. I think she's wrong about a lot of things. I don't like how she uses social media. I don't like a lot of things about her. But it's just enough already. This is not good for anybody. This doesn't accomplish anything. Just humiliating somebody because that will get a lot of attention.
When she says this isn't good for anybody, who is she talking about? Good for who? Because the people that it's really not good for are the politician. That's what it's not good for. So to say that, again, she's agreeing with just about everything that you said in that video, agreeing with it. But then to say, I'm getting kind of tired of it. This isn't good for anybody. This goes back to the civility politics issue. And we're going to talk about this on Call In tonight. Because why is it? It just seems like to me that there are certain people, let's just call them the professional managerial class. There are certain people that feel like they are the ones that can decide when enough is enough. They are the ones that can decide whether or not your protesting is correct if you're doing it in the right way. They are the ones that decide whether or not your activism is done correctly as well. And at the same time, they're not activists. At the same time, they're not protesting. They're not doing any of these things. But in a way, it's almost like they become the gatekeeper of direct action and civility politics.
Yeah, I mean, well, these two, they have a show with 1.5 million subscribers, right? I don't know how much they're allowed to actually state their own opinions on the show. So I'm not sure about that. But it did actually seem like this was this lady's actual opinion.
Yeah.
So they act like everybody has a show with 1.5 million subscribers where you can just like, sit down and analyze the pros and cons of each issue so that you could, I am capable of doing that too. Like if you ask me about immigration or war in Ukraine or defense spending or whatever the topic is, I could talk to different kinds of people across the political aisle, and I could try to find a position, like a moderate position, in a nice tone of voice. But I need an hour to do that. At the town hall, I had 10 seconds to get my point out, and people were analyzing it as if I have, 1 or 2 hours to explain the nuance of these positions. This kind of thing, it's like you got 5 to 10 seconds, run, go, and leave. Before this guy, like the guy didn't even let me get a full sentence out when I was starting.
Well, I'm thinking about some of like the leaders that we've had in the past. Like what would they have said, and not just like these two in particular, but just like that class. Like what would they have said to someone like Malcolm X? Because Malcolm X did not use civility politics. I mean, what would have they said to him? Like, you're being rude. It's too crass. It's too much. Enough is enough. Stop. What would they have said to MLK? Okay, this whole sit-in thing that you guys are doing and the busing thing, we get the point. Enough is enough. Stop. I'm getting tired of it already. What would they have said?
I don't know, but I think more people should just go to their town halls and, take a little video, send it to me, and I'll tweet it out. My Twitter handle is Lucy Can22, or tweet at tweet at you, Sabby Sabs, or indienews.network. I'm just, because like more people need their opinions heard. There's a lot of topics that I don't know about, that a lot of parts of the country. After that town hall, somebody actually sent me a video of of them heckling a politician in the state of Colorado. And they did that several years ago. And I was like, wow, I never found out about this. So I think it would be great if, if you disagree with me on some issue, fine, but like go heckle your politician on whatever issue that you think people need solved in your community. And let's make this a wave, because yes, it is a little bit of it does come across as a stunt when it's AOC's district. I actually live here. So,
Right.
This is not like, I did not register my address in AOC's district in order to follow AOC's political career. Like I lived there before I knew about her existence. So, I don't know who they think they're talking to, but yeah. Yeah, I'm going to go on a little bit more here.
I have very little sympathy for that kind of thing. It just really, I'm really starting to sour on it. It's making me feel sorry for her, and it's making me defend her. And even though I agree with the constituent, I agree with what she's saying. Where is the anti-war left? The anti-war left is dead, and AOC is perhaps the face of that. But this kind of thing, I don't know, Robbie. Where are you on this?
No, I'm glad you bring that up. I think it's one thing for a constituent to attend these town hall events and ask her very pointed questions about why she continues to support this. The tone of the question can be confrontational and angry, and she can say in the question, and by the way, we need an independent third-party movement that is going to hold Democrats accountable for abandoning the left on foreign interventionism, and I'm signing people outside after this event. Say it in 10 seconds. Ask the question. Be confrontational. That's fine. But when you just come to an event and kind of hijack it and start shouting down the speaker, I mean, the rest of the people there, they have their own questions they want to ask. They want AOC, I'm sure, to address a lot of things in addition to that. If you're hijacking the event, and I don't know how long that went on.
So he says he doesn't know how long it went on. But see, this is the other piece that I have to say again here. I really do think they should have brought you on the show and talked to you about it in person and not assuming what happened there, because you were actually there. And I feel like this kind of comes across to me as tone policing when Robbie says, oh, well, this is how she should have said it. Like it should have been come across this way. And it's just, again, it's always the people who are not the activists, who are not the protesters, trying to tell activists how they should speak, how they should behave. And it's just, it's appalling to me. Again, I feel like it's a lot of gatekeeping, and who makes them the authority of what activism should be. So to me, it's like, it's easy to sit back and tell someone how you should have said it. I don't see them going to town halls and putting pressure on these politicians, so this is a big, like Brother Daniel said, it's tone policing. I don't like that. I really don't. Like, why is that the focus so much on what Lucy said and the way Lucy said it, instead of focusing on the fact that AOC is a failed politician, one of the most ineffective politicians that you have in Congress right now, and that AOC abandoned the left so that she could be a careerist? Why aren't they focusing on the failures that she has done that brought someone like Lucy to come out and say what she said? I want to get your take on that, Lucy.
I mean, that's exactly it. Like, I just want to follow one of the comments that I said, that someone that didn't like this strategy of registering independent. Roger Meadows, I'm following his strategy, by the way. Like, I consider him to be the strategist in this. He's going to talk about it on your call-in. Maybe he'll comment it on Thursday. If anybody has, arguments about this, or questions or different opinions. But in general, for the tone policing stuff, yes, I think, they just have an hour to fill with like crap, and they act like you're on salary. Like, you should have said it this way. It would have been more professional.
Yep.
This is not a professional environment. I don't get paid to do this. This is like, 1 hour out of my time that I took on a Saturday. So no, I don't have to be professional. This is not my job. That's it. Like, if you want to actually improve this country, Robbie, Batya, whatever, start doing something. Like, start doing something other than this shitty show. Because this is just, the Hill is just, I don't judge them that much, actually. Like, when I saw the segment, I kind of laughed and I was like, whatever. Everybody needs a job, right? Everybody has to pay the bills. All of us have jobs that involve some kind of BS in some way or another. Maybe not you, Sabby, because you work at something that you're passionate about. But my job, like the jobs that I've had, have some BS. It's just shit that you have to put up with at work. So like, I don't even judge them. But ultimately, the Hill is, it's ridiculous. It's a ridiculous show. They're not telling the truth. And I don't even know if they're trying to brand themselves as independent or mainstream media. Maybe they've just accepted that they're mainstream media. I don't care what they say. I really don't. My thing was like reaching out to the people in my area, seeing if it got shared on Twitter, and it actually worked because, for example, one girl reached out to me and she was like, "Oh, I live in Queens, I want to join." 2 or 3 people at least, people were like, "I want to sign up. Is there a sign up?" I'm like, "No, there isn't a sign up, but it would be great if you joined us on call-in, if you joined us, if you went to indienews.network, if you followed my Twitter, I'll try to come up with a strategy. If more people actually join up, and if you disagree with the strategy, then you can tell us why. I'm not like, the queen of anything. This is supposed to be like a organic thing."
Okay, let's go on.
Obviously, if all it was the clip we saw, okay, I guess that's fine. But like you, it has to be done in a certain way because you can't shout down the other.
I'm sorry, I have to chime in here. He said it has to be done in a certain way. And it is very clear to me they don't understand what happens at these town halls. Again, I've been to town halls, you've been to town halls. Again, as I said at the beginning of the show, of the segment, those questions are already chosen. They already know which questions are going to be answered. So most of the people there don't get to ask a question anyway. And even if Lucy would have had that question written down, that question would have been skipped over. You know, there's certain things they're not going to respond to. The controversial questions they're not going to respond to. So again, they're talking about something I feel like they don't really know about. And I feel like the right thing to do would have been to bring Lucy on. Lucy is not unreachable. Lucy's DMs, at least last time I checked, your DMs weren't closed. Lucy's not unreachable. And this is somebody who canvassed for AOC. This is somebody who helped get AOC elected in 2018. And why not reach out, you know, why not extend the offer and reach out to Lucy and bring Lucy on the show so she can tell you exactly what happened at the town hall. Lucy is active on Twitter. I don't understand this. I really don't. Like, to me, I felt like that was a missed opportunity.
People who are there who all want to get questions in. So I think AOC should definitely be asked about it. I'm glad activists are confronting her about it. Yeah. But you don't have a right to, like, take over an entire event like that. So that's.
I don't think that took over the entire event. Like, you guys saw Lucy talk for what? How many? What? 2 minutes, maybe? Like,
well, they were. I was after the cutoff point, so there were a lot of people waiting to have questions that just had to leave. So and the Q&A was like 15 minutes, and AOC's PowerPoint presentation was like 1 hour, one hour and a half of talking points of all of the money that she claims, $19 million. That she claims to have delivered to the area. We have 650,000 people in our area. 19 million isn't going to do anything. There's people that need homes, Medicare for all, amnesty, reparations. Like, what about the big issues? Do you think like funneling $19 million or $10 million into some kind of immigration aid nonprofit? Or they also said that they were providing the most laughable things, like, you know, a $5,000 credit to convert an electric stove. People are homeless, you know?
Right.
People need education, like housing, basic services. And they're talking about electric stove, help filling out immigration forms when there's no amnesty law to add a process that allows people to apply for citizenship. It's ridiculous. This is just like, you know, these like little crumbs. And then people show up, like the older people who are smart in that way. They show up because they know that they give out crumbs at these town halls, right? And, you know, but the questions they take, like one guy was like when is my social security check coming in? Or, you know, things like this, like, that are very, I wouldn't say they're not important on an individual level, but definitely nothing about the 100 billion to Ukraine or anything about any overarching issue that really makes a difference in a lot of people's lives. It was all like Lewis, actually, that video that you showed, that one was really good because he got really angry because she started saying that this was ridiculous. She started saying that, I wish I had like videoed the whole thing, that basically our currency is going to go downhill in June, and that if Congress does not raise the debt ceiling, which the bumblebee called the theft ceiling, and if they don't get Republicans to raise the debt ceiling, then that's going to result in cuts to Medicare and Social Security. So, you know, the whole thing was set up. It was like, if we don't fight Republicans, our currency is going to go down the shitter in June, and you're going to have no Medicare, Social Security. It was like fear mongering and that's when Lewis got mad, and he was like, "This is not true. Both parties have cut Medicare, Social Security. You know this. You know that Biden has always been a fan of cutting Medicare, and that's something that's really important to these older voters." So, you know, it's like it was crazy the way she lied. She said that she voted against the defense budget, which she did not. She did it the first time, but recently she did not vote against any defense budget. So I don't know what the solution to this is, but I feel like people should be heckling in every town hall. Like every town hall, that these or any Republicans too, like go heckle them too. I don't.
That's right. That's right. I'll go on a little bit more here.
Yeah,
that's the line I would draw.
It weakens the claim. Like, you don't have to stand there and scream, why are we giving this money to Nazis in Ukraine? Like, come on. Like, it's like we can talk about the Azov battalion as having a kind of, neo-Nazi valence to it. We can talk about the fact that only a third of the weapons and a third of the money that we're sending to Ukraine makes it to the front. We can talk about all that stuff. But if you approach somebody who has a real role in making decisions about this, and you start throwing around language like that, do you really think AOC is not going to go back to Washington and be like, that woman had a point. Why are we, no. Mm-hmm. All it does is make it harder for people to take a stand. All it does is make her associate a real important critique about where our money is going with the wrong side of things, as opposed to being like, hey, maybe that person has a point. Maybe I should be talking to, Marjorie Taylor Greene about this,
This is really, I think, foolish on Batya's part, because she's speaking as if AOC doesn't already realize and acknowledge the fact that the money is not going in the right places. She's speaking as though this is a protection for AOC here. I want to be very clear, people. This is a protection, because the way that she's talking about this, she's talking about it in a way that maybe AOC just doesn't understand that the money is not being spent the way that it should be. AOC 100% realizes that the money is not going to the people. So Batya, in this discussion, she is running cover for AOC. Although she said she agrees with the things that Lucy said, she's still running cover, and she's still tone policing, because she's saying, well, this woman, when she's referring to Lucy, shouldn't have said it in this way. Well, who made Batya the authority over town hall questions? Like, who? Did you guys see what I mean about the gatekeeping? The gatekeeping is like, and it's not just these two in this particular situation. Lucy, we've seen this as a pattern. We have seen this as a pattern where PMCs, they do it on Twitter too. They come in and try to tell activists, this is not the way you should organize. You're doing this incorrectly. Look at the way people smeared and criticized the Medicare for All marches last year. A lot of PMCs were doing that. People that some of you like too, to be real. So it's always the people who are not a part of the equation that want to criticize it from the outside when they're not taking any part. They're not activists. They're not protesters. And as soon as you criticize them, they'll be quick to tell you, well, I'm not an activist. Well, I'm not an organizer. Great. I'm glad that you acknowledge that. Then don't try to tell us how to do it.
Yeah. And I mean, whatever, like this whole lady's argument is that it doesn't sit well with her. Like it gives her an uneasy feeling in her stomach or whatever. It doesn't really matter because, well, first of all, she probably did not even research to find out who I am.
No.
Or like even wonder, probably was just like Spanish speaker, probably doesn't speak English. That's it. She probably, this is probably what she thought. And she didn't reach out. And then she says that it sits funny with her and that she doesn't think that it'll reach that many people. Actually, she's wrong. It reached a lot of people. It reached people in the area that tweeted at me after that. And they were like, how can I join? How can I help? So it actually worked very well because Batya and Robbie are not my target audience. So
right.
like this it didn't work at all. My goal was to register people in my area, like get them to understand some of the things that are actually happening. And I think it worked very well. And I think it would have worked better if more people showed up at these town halls and did it, because a lot of the people that go are older voters, older people. There's very few younger people at these town halls, but considering the fact that I've done a lot of these polite, incremental things in the past that have gotten very little attention, for years. I even helped canvass for this horrible woman, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and now I regret it. So I did all of those civil things. So, she doesn't understand like the whole background and buildup of the situation that we're in, that we've had it. We have tried all of the nice ways. We've tried to do the canvassing and the letter writing, and we've tried to make a phone call, or this doesn't work.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
This is what I was trying to tell people too. Like, I knew, that's why I was like, when I saw this segment, I was like, so if they would have spoken to Lucy, they would have known that Lucy had already tried all those other ways. And you're not alone. There's other people I've spoken to as well that told me they've contacted her office. They've tried writing the letters. There's no response, or they just get the runaround. Like, people have already tried that. And people have reached their breaking point. I'm going to play this last part right here, because this is where they start to disagree.
He's like actually been very staunchly anti-war. You know, we need to be finding more ways to make our message get heard.
Well, I think,
I agree with you. Ask the question. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just saying, I think the anti-AOC side, and are just the people against the Democratic consensus on funding Ukraine, I think they can't help but bring up the kind of Nazi line because of how much Democrats hurled the "you're a Nazi, you're a fascist" line at anyone and everyone who supported Donald Trump. Now that it is true that a component of the Ukrainian resistance, not the entire army, but a component of it is a Nazi-ish aligned group, and we are, in a sort of indirect way, funding that group. Is an irony that Democrats, again, who called everyone a Nazi, have to own. And I think it's just totally fair to confront them on it, even if, screaming at someone, or as a member of Congress, that you're a Nazi, you're funding Nazis, is not going to be a good persuasion tactic. I mean, obviously the idea is not necessarily to persuade AOC, but I guess to get the other audience members to wake up to this reality. Or maybe if AOC attends enough events where all she does is face pushback on this issue, then she will prioritize it more, or she'll say, hey, my constituents are really angry about this. Even a small number of phone calls I understand, this is what I've been told, to a Congress member's office phone will make them think that that tons of people are fired up about an issue, because people so rarely do that.
Is that necessarily the case, Lucy? Because people have called AOC's office and that hasn't changed anything.
Maybe in the small town or whatever suburb he is in, where there's like a strong maybe community group or something where politicians actually care what their constituents think because the people in the area have money or donate to those politicians. But I can guarantee that if in my 10-second time frame I had said something as stupid as what Robbie just did, which is like, okay, maybe some members of the Ukrainian army are a little bit Nazi-ish, but at the same time, indirectly, we're funding a component of the Ukrainian army that is a little bit Nazi-ish, I can guarantee that message would not have worked in 10 seconds. So this is just like when he went into this whole Nazi-ish, like that, we're funding Nazis in Ukraine. That's it. Like, I didn't say that Ukrainians are all Nazis. I never said that. I said Nazis in Ukraine, these rebel groups that the United States funds, not just in Ukraine, but in Syria, in the Middle East, and other parts of the world, in order to create chaos in these countries. So that's what I was saying. People understand it. I don't know what Robbie's talking about. He's really going off the deep end. Like,
I think it's just, something I think it would have been really helpful. I think it would have been really helpful for them to have you on for this segment. Like, I really do. They're trying to guess what else happened and what your intentions were. And what they should have just done was just to reach out to you, just like they reach out to everybody else. They should have just reached out to you and invited you on. And I think that would have cleared up a lot of things. I really do. It just, to me, I don't like the tone policing. I don't like the whole civility politics. Things that have happened, real movements that have won in this country were not done civilly. The women's rights movement, even the civil rights movement, even though Martin Luther King said that, we have to be nonviolent. Some of the protests that occurred during the civil rights movement, people complain about those same type of actions happening today. No, you're not supposed to block off the roads. They blocked off the roads during the civil rights movement. They had the sit-ins at different restaurants. People complain about that. So It wasn't civil at the end of the day. Malcolm X was not civil. Blocking off roads wasn't civil. The women's movement, them having a hunger strike, that was not civil. The Black Panthers was not civil. So what you have is you have a group of PMCs, this professional managerial class, that they want to have reforms, but they don't want the fight for the reform to make them uncomfortable. And that's a big problem.
Yeah, that's exactly it, Sabby.
I just can't. I can't. Well, Lucy, thank you so much for coming on. I'm going to talk about this after the show on Call In tonight because I want to hear the audience's opinions about this, about civility politics, because I feel like being too nice to politicians is what got us in this position to begin with. Being too nice to people like Bernie Sanders and AOC. You know, that's just my take.
Yeah, and honestly, like, especially if you are somebody that has a lot of responsibilities or, you know, other things to do, I actually think that this form of protest, and I've done other things, like I've been to your big protests and, like, you know, you've done letter writing, all of these things. I feel like this type of protest is very effective and it's actually relatively safe because it looks really bad for them to beat somebody up at a town hall. You know, those things are televised, whatever. So it's relatively safe to do. You can go, you just got to get it in 10 seconds. You don't have to, you know, there's no, you shouldn't be violent. I wasn't actually being violent, but I had to raise my voice because otherwise nobody was going to hear me. So I actually think out of the forms of protest, like, I think it worked pretty well. It's a safe thing to do for those that are concerned about safety. I'd say go for it.
I hear you. Well, Lucy, thank you so much for coming on. You're going on to another show later on this week, correct?
I'm going on Hardlands on Friday, I think. Yeah.
Awesome. And how can people find you again one more time?
You can find me at LucyCan22. And also Indy asked me to share his plug because he's helped me out a lot. IndyNews.network.
All right. Lucy, thank you so much.
All right. Bye. Thank you so much, Sabby.
Bye.
Okay.
All right, guys. So yeah, a lot of fire, a lot of power there. I really do wish they would have had Lucy come on to talk to her herself instead of trying to assume what she meant there and what her intentions were. Let's go to a couple of comments and then we're going to go to the next story. Deathacale said Malcolm X told his peers to register independent in the ballot or bullet speech. Interesting. Rocco says Batya wrote a book about the working class of the past, but doesn't want to support the working class of the present. That's interesting. Joy, I do not want to hear from two rich people chastising an activist who is representing the people better than their elected person, AOC. Delvia says, I have a right to take over any event I can. Roger says, New York State is #1 in income inequality for the 10th year in a row. That's crazy, isn't it? Oracle Adelphi says, this is that Democrat/establishment apparatus trying to police the narrative and shape the way Lucy is perceived and diminish, distract from her message. 100%. Thank you so much for that. So we're moving on to our next story. This is a local story here in Boston, and it's about education. You guys know I'm very passionate about education. I'm a former educator, and I think that teachers honestly are one of the most underappreciated professions in the United States. Some people actually say that teaching isn't even considered a profession in the United States. I think a lot of times they're underpaid, they're overworked. This myth that teachers do not work during the summer, that's actually not true. There's still work that needs to be done. And I think about everything that teachers in Boston had to go through during the pandemic. I remember friends of mine that were teaching in public schools here being required to come and teach into an empty classroom while the students were at home learning remotely. And some of those students struggled to do that because not everyone has a quiet space at their home where they can learn remotely for 8 hours a day. Not to mention, not everyone has a laptop for every child that they have at home. But now something else has happened. Now, this comes from the Boston Globe. Hold on to your seat for this one. Boston Teachers Union is calling for audit amid payroll debacle that is shortchanging thousands of teachers. Hold on. Here we go. Boston Public Schools has yet to pay thousands of teachers and other educators millions of dollars in a pay increase for the last school year and most of this fall. One of the most egregious in a growing number of payroll problems that has their union calling for an audit. So, Boston Public School teachers, for those who are not aware, there is a union for BPS. The rule used to be, I'm not sure if it's the same now, but the rule used to be you had to teach at least for 3 years in order to join the union. And that's if you still get in the union. Then once you're in, you're pretty much set and safe. But some of the teachers that I've spoken to didn't even make it to that 3-year mark to join the union. So it's like they wouldn't have a contract. They would teach at one school for a year. They don't have a contract, so they're not guaranteed a position to come back the next year. So then they would go teach in another school, maybe not in the Boston, the BPS area. So that kind of prevents you from being able to get to be a part of that union because it has to be BPS. So it has to be Boston Public Schools, right? But long story short, seems like to me, Boston Public Schools owes these teachers some money. The pay increases were part of a 3-year contract ratified 4 months ago by the Boston Teachers Union, which had been working without a contract for a year. So this is another thing I want to add. Once you join the union, now you have a contract, but you have to get to that point. So like I said, the rule used to be you had to teach a BPS for 3 years in order to be eligible to join the union. So you have to make it to that 3-year mark, and it's not easy to do if you don't have a contract. That contract calls for union members to receive at least 9.5% in pay increases over 3 years, beginning retroactively in September 2021. So they also owe them retroactive pay. Consequently, BPS owes about 9,000 current and former union members a total of more than $16 million, but hasn't cut the paychecks yet and still doesn't know exactly how much every educator is owed. Now, let me get this straight. $16 million is owed to these teachers. $16 million. And they don't know how much every educator is owed. So like Massachusetts, last time I checked, I have to check again because sometimes it flip-flops. Massachusetts was number 1 for public education in the United States. Number 1. I think if they tried, they can figure out how much each teacher is owed. They just got to put in the work because this is retroactive pay. And that's going to require some hours. Not paying employees what they're owed or on time shows disrespect and disregard. And educators have had enough. That's coming from Jessica Tang. She's the union's president. The delays and issues are impacting not just employee morale, but also impacting staffing for students. The district and the city need to audit its accounting and payroll operations immediately. The district must address these egregious delays and demonstrate it can fulfill this basic employer responsibility. And I love how she put this so effortlessly here. Basic employer responsibility, because it is basic. Payroll is basic. People need to be paid. They need to be paid a certain time, and there's a certain amount of salary they're supposed to be paid. How could they mess this up? Let's go on. According to Boston Globe calculations, the average retroactive check for teachers could be about $3,000. The Globe based its calculations on state data that indicates the average teacher salary in Boston is more than $100,000 a year, and the period during which the pay increases were not reflected in the union members' weekly pay was September 1st, 2021 to November 17, 2022. I want to point out something here when it says the average teacher salary in Boston is more than $100,000 a year. I actually remember that's the average. I actually don't know anyone that teaches in Boston that's making more than that. Just FYI. Just wanted to put that there. Educators' other concerns largely center on extensive delays in stipend payments for work already completed. Boy, I tell you. One teacher with a law degree also threatened possible litigation during a school committee meeting last week, noting the new contract is supposed to finally pay teachers with law degrees the same rate as those with doctorates, but continues to pay them less. I've seen this happen before. Not just with Boston Public Schools. I've seen this happen before in South Carolina. And it's true. The teachers that come in with a higher degree, they are supposed to make more. So you mean to tell me you've had teachers at BPS with a law degree and they were being underpaid? They weren't paying them the same pay scale as the teachers that have a PhD? I don't understand how this went on for as long as it did. Because remember, it's retroactive. They said this is going back to 2021. BPS indicated for weeks the retroactive checks would be issued on January 20th, but walked that promise back earlier this month when it notified the union the payments would be delayed until at least February 17th. Why February 17th? Where's the money? Why can't you just pay them on January 20th? BPS issued a public apology for the delays. We are committed to providing excellent service and support for students and staff alike. And we sincerely apologize to any impacted staff for the recent delay in retroactive pay. That's coming from Max Baker, a school spokesperson. We understand this has caused hardships to those affected, and we are working to issue payments as soon as possible. Let's talk about the hardships piece here for just a minute. Boston is one of the most expensive cities in the U.S. to live in. Add on top of that inflation. Gas prices are going back up again, by the way. I've noticed that too. It's one thing to apologize. It's another thing to just give people their money. The fact that this started in 2021, it's now 2023. So I don't understand how this could have gone on for this long. Pay the teachers, pay them. I bet you the principal was paid. I bet the superintendents got their pay. People are leaving the teaching profession, you guys. Do you guys know this? People are quitting teaching because they're not appreciated. They're undervalued. And apparently, people don't want to pay them on time. This is exactly how you end up losing good educators. This is exactly how you lose them. Not paying them. Little things like that. But yes, especially since the pandemic, teachers are declining in the United States, not declining, excuse me. Teachers are decreasing in the United States. The same thing with nurses. Not appreciated. The union calls for an audit come as the state is closely monitoring the school system, which 2 state reviews over the past 3 years have characterized as struck in systemic dysfunction that is impeding the academic progress of tens of thousands of students. The latest review issued last May resulted in a district improvement plan that already has BPS cranking through several operational reviews, including special education, transportation, and safety services. However, the district improvement plan didn't call for auditing payroll or other business functions, including human resources. Let's talk about auditing the payroll. Something else happened in Massachusetts, similar situation. It was with the state troopers in Massachusetts. A couple years ago, they found out that some of the state troopers were giving themselves overtime and they weren't working overtime. Someone wasn't watching the payroll system. This was huge news here in Massachusetts. You had state troopers that were making six figures. They were just giving themselves overtime. Isn't this crazy? BPS said figuring out how much is owed to each union member is time consuming and complicated. Well, I'm sorry, but if you would have been paying people on schedule and doing what you were supposed to do back in 2021, it wouldn't be time consuming and it wouldn't be complicated. It goes on to say, and includes a variety of policies, procedures, and union contract rules. These are excuses. These are excuses, ladies and gentlemen, for them to delay paying them. None of this would be an issue if they paid them on time back in 2021. According to the teachers' union contract, pay scales for union members vary based on the positions they hold, such as teachers or paraprofessionals, and can include pay steps based on years of experience, academic degrees, and additional college credits. Yes, and that is also similar for other professions as well. What are they getting at? Like, give me a break. Come on. I could say the same thing for the military, right? I mean, if you're in the military, your pay is based on your rank. So an E1 is going to make less than an E2. An E2 is going to make less than an E3. Okay. Oh, I don't know why they're talking about this to make it seem like this is only a thing that happens in education. It's not. It happens across industries. There's different levels. Different levels have different salary expectations, minimums and maximums. And yes, when you take additional college credits or you have an advanced degree, your pay may vary. I don't know why they're making it seem like this is just an education thing. That's funny to me. This is hilarious. They're cracking me up. Oh my God. The school system also needs to issue payments to current union members and those in good standing who departed BPS anytime between September 1st, 2021, and November 17th, 2022. Okay, so you have a lot to do. They should get started. They should get started. But other problems appear to be impeding BPS efforts this year. In notifying the union about the delay, BPS told the union it was experiencing data problems. Oh God, now all of a sudden we can't do it because the technology isn't working anymore. According to the union, and warned there could be further delays. Guys, haven't we heard this song and dance before? It's going to take us a while to get this done because there's so many different levels involved with teachers in BPS. Then it goes from that to, oh no, we're having data problems. Technology just crashed. Boy, I tell you. Oh my God. Oh dear. It goes on to say, BPS, for instance, recently received a large payroll file from the city for the period covered by the retroactive checks and is now trying to reconcile it with its own records to verify who's eligible. Yo, there is a list of this, okay? Eric said, did they try turning off and back on? It's just excuses. So long story short here, this is a statement from Tang. Our educators are proud to work in Boston Public Schools, and because we want to both attract new talent and retain our committed staff, we are raising these issues to get them resolved so that it doesn't become a reason why anyone leaves or doesn't come to work for the district. No, you should want to get the issue resolved because you owe them money, because it's the moral thing to do. It is not easy to become a teacher in Boston for Boston Public Schools. I remember when I was doing my observations at the Elliott School, I was talking to some of the teachers there at that point in time. Massachusetts is different. In Massachusetts, having a bachelor's degree to teach in Boston Public Schools, that's not enough. Most of the teachers in BPS have a master's degree. And if you don't have a master's degree, you have to get one, at least by the first 5 years. This is how it used to be. They're probably not taking anyone that doesn't have a master's now. This is part of the reason why Massachusetts is like number one in the US for education, because of the teachers that they hire. They're hiring people that have advanced degrees. So you have to have that. You need to have a master's degree. And then on top of that, you need to have other certifications, because just having that master's degree is not enough to get those positions. A lot of people are fighting for those positions to become a teacher in Boston Public Schools, and it is very difficult to get it because you're competing up against amazing talent. And then on top of that, if you don't have those additional certifications, and I'm talking about having a certification in special education, having a certification for English language learners, ELL, they want you to have all of that now. It's not just enough just to have a bachelor's. It's not just enough just to have a master's. You need to have all those other additional things as well. But that's one of the reasons why Massachusetts is number one in education. It's a lot. And no, the school does not pay for those certifications. They do not pay for it. So that's that. Long story short, BPS, just pay the people. Just pay the damn people. Let me go to some of the questions here. Jonathan says, thank you, Lucy. Great job. Was the $2 super chat. Oh, did you try to send one and it didn't? Sometimes these things happen. Mark says, Sab, 20 years, a history teacher, underappreciated everyone. I hear you, Mark. Jiminy says, strike, strike, strike. Thanks for the super chat, Colin. Wildcat strike. I hear that. Juliet says, you borrow money, you pay internet. You overdraft, you pay an overdraft fee. I hope they get their money plus some. That's a good point. They should get more at this point. Hey, you says, Massachusetts must be wealthy, relatively speaking. It is one of the wealthiest states in the country. Yes. But there's also wealth. The wealth gap here is also pretty large as well. Just FYI. Thanks for the super chat, Angela. Testing the super chat waters. Hi, Sabby. Data issues is right up there with the check is in the mail. We are always left wondering, where did all that money go? Thank you for that, Angela. Yeah, it's true, right? That is true. Okay, we are moving on to our final story. Ron DeSantis and Nina Turner are butting heads about critical race theory. Now, Ron DeSantis has made a decision in Florida in reference to AP African American courses in high schools in Florida. And Nina Turner is obviously against his decision. But before we get into all that jazz, let's start off by defining critical race theory, because there seems to be some misconceptions about what CRT actually is. So what exactly is critical race theory? Let's dive into this bad boy. Critical race theory: intellectual and social movement and loosely organized framework of legal analysis based on the premise that race is not a natural, biologically grounded feature of physically distinct subgroups of human beings, but a socially constructed category that is used to oppress and exploit people of color. Critical race theorists hold that racism is inherent in the law and legal institutions in the United States, insofar as they function to create and maintain social, economic, and political inequalities between whites and non-whites, especially African Americans. Critical race theorists are generally dedicated to applying their understanding of this institutional and structural nature of racism to the concrete, if distant, goal of eliminating all race-based and other unjust hierarchies. CRT. But even though there's a lot of talk about CRT today, I do want you to understand that CRT is not new. It's just more popular now. CRT actually started during the 1980s. And I want to point your attention here to a couple of individuals. This is Dr. Kimberly Crenshaw. This is Kendall Thomas. And this is Patricia Williams. I actually had to do, for a job interview, if you believe it or not, I had to do a complete presentation about Kimberly Crenshaw and critical race theory and intersection. I had to do a whole, that was part of the interview. Just the interview, one part of it. Now, let's get to this piece here, because this is the piece that I want people to see. Critical race theory was a movement that initially started at Harvard under Professor Derek Bell in the 1980s. So again, it's not new. You just hear about it more now because it's more popular. So if you notice, you didn't hear as many people complaining about it back then. It goes on to say it evolved in reaction to critical legal studies, which came about in the 70s and dissected the idea that law was just and neutral. Over time, the movement grew among legal scholars, mostly of color, at law schools across the country, including at UCLA, where Crenshaw lectured on critical race theory, civil rights, and constitutional law, and later at Columbia, where she was appointed as a full professor in 1995, alongside Williams, a former student, research assistant, and lifelong mentee of Bell's, and who is now professor of law emerita. Just a little bit of background there. Now let's get into this issue here with Ron DeSantis. So, oh dear. I think I'm just hopping to the video. I'll hop to the title first. So this is what has happened in Florida. DeSantis defends banning African American Studies course as Black leaders call for action. So I want to point out this article here. And Eric, please put the link to this article to people in the chat so they can see it. Just to give you an idea, a quick idea of what's happening. Governor Ron DeSantis on Monday stood by Florida's decision to reject student access to an AP course on African American studies as outrage mounts surrounding the move, particularly among Black leaders. The Republican governor said that he supports banning the course being offered to some high school students because its lessons delve too far into political agendas, broaching topics such as queer studies and abolishing prisons. Black officials in the state, from Democratic lawmakers to faith leaders, however, are seeking to overturn DeSantis administration's determination that the class significantly lacks educational value. So this is the argument that he's trying to make, that it lacks educational value and that it has a political agenda attached to it, talking about things as a queer agenda and also abolishing prisons. That is the argument that he's making for preventing this from moving forward. Now, yet during a press conference Monday, DeSantis showed no signs of reversing the decision to bar the course in Florida. The College Board, the organization responsible for administering standardized tests like the SATs, had spent a decade developing African American Studies AP course and is offering it to more than 60 schools in the country as a pilot program. So I want to show this clip here, and we're going to get to the Nina Turner part as well, because someone did ask this question to Ron DeSantis recently, and I want you to hear his statement on this as well. But let's talk about AP courses for just a second here, just for people who are not aware. I took AP courses in high school. AP courses are not required. It's an option. So the way it worked is that you had your regular English. So if you were, let's go with junior. If you were a junior in high school, there was an option to take the English course for your junior year, or you could take honors English, or you could take AP English. I took AP English. It was an option. I have to say that for people who have never had any experience with this. So to me, it just kind of seemed like whether he agrees with the political ideology of the course, it's not like students are being required to take it. And there are courses that you are required to take. It's an option. So if students want to take the course, I feel like they should be able to take the course. If students don't want to take the course, I feel like they shouldn't be forced to take the course. So my whole thing is that if you feel as though this course is going to make certain groups of people feel bad about their self and their history in this country, then they don't have to take the course, Ron. This is just how I feel about it. I don't understand why this was made to be such a big deal. Just leave it be. Just leave it be. You know, there's so many other things to be focusing on right now instead of focusing on this course, which is optional. Now, he did respond to this. Let's listen to what he had to say.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Governor, on the AP African American.
Oh, we're going to have to do volume boost, Eric. For this one. Yeah. I forgot the volume on this one is particularly low.
Governor, on the AP African American Studies course that was rejected by the state, been a lot of criticism.
Curriculum. This was a separate.
Governor, on the
Okay. Yes, sir.
Governor, on the AP African American Studies course that was rejected by the state, been a lot of criticism of that move. People saying, you know, this is exactly what we were fearing with the individual freedom bill. I don't know if you or the commissioner could maybe expand a little bit more about.
Sure. I mean, I think so. As you know, in the state of Florida, our education standards not only don't prevent, but they require teaching Black history, all the important things. That's part of our core curriculum. This was a separate course on top of that for advanced placement credit. And the issue is
Pause. Let's talk about the Black history piece for a second. If you have not attended a Black school, chances are the only time that you learn about Black history is in February during Black History Month. Chances are. And that's not enough time to go in depth. It really isn't. But you learn about European history all through high school, all through middle school. This is part of the problem. And I've said this before, like Black history should be taught throughout the whole year, along with all the other history that you learn. So to limit it, unless there is a chapter on slavery, unless you hit that part of the history book where you're talking about slavery, unless you hit that part of the history book where you're now talking about the civil rights movement, for the most part, a lot of times in some of these schools, it's not even touched on in a way that is actually meaningful. It doesn't go far enough. It doesn't go deep enough. I can talk to people that I know that grew up in Maine where they told me in Maine, it's not even required. So this is a part of the problem. This is one piece I think I do agree with Morgan Freeman on when he said, why is it a separate thing? Why isn't it just taught with all the rest of the other history instead of trying to condone it to just 1 month? So that's part of the problem. Let's go on. Let's go back because he was starting here.
You know, this is exactly what we were fearing with the individual freedom bill. I don't know if you or the commissioner could maybe expand a little bit more about.
Sure. I mean, I think so. As you know, in the state of Florida, our education standards not only don't prevent, but they require teaching Black history, all the important things. That's part of our core curriculum. This was a separate course on top of that for advanced placement credit. And the issue is we have guidelines and standards in Florida. We want education, not indoctrination. If you fall on the side of indoctrination, we're going to decline. If it's education, then we will do this.
So then how was the course even able to pass? If it doesn't meet the requirements, how was the course able to be designed in the first place? Do you see what I'm saying? Because when you create a course, and I know this, having worked with faculty on this as well, when you create a course, there are certain requirements that that course has to meet. So how was the course approved in the first place? They said it took them 10 years to create this course.
We're going to decline. If it's education, then we will do this course. So when I heard it didn't meet the standards, I figured, yeah, they may be doing serious. It's way more than that. This course on Black history, what's one of the lessons about? Queer theory. Now, who would say that an important part of Black history is queer theory? That is somebody pushing an agenda on our kids. And so when you look to see they have stuff about intersectionality, abolishing prisons, that's a political agenda. And so that's the wrong side of the line for Florida standards. We believe in teaching kids facts and how to think, but we don't believe they should have an agenda imposed on them. When you try to use Black history to shoehorn in queer theory, you are clearly trying to use that for political purposes. Yes.
Political purposes and agenda. The education system as a whole, at least the public education system, based on what I've experienced, has always kind of had some agenda to it. I'm just going to be real. I'm sorry, but they don't even tell you the true history. They don't. Let's keep it real here. If he wants to talk about some type of agenda, the history that you learn when you're in public schools, the stories in your history textbook, that is not, number one, the whole story. And some of it isn't even true. They don't go that far. They don't go that deep. This is what I'm trying to tell you guys. In history class, they don't teach you the truth about Martin Luther King. Does your history textbooks in the public school system, does it tell you that Dr. King was anti-capitalist? Does it tell you that Dr. King was calling for reparations before he was killed? Don't tell you those things, does it? Does it tell you how the FBI was after MLK? What does it tell you about the Black Panthers? It tells you they were a militant group. This is what it said in my history point. The Black Panthers were a militant group. Does it tell you that they were feeding and clothing people? That they were doing mutual aid? That they were building clinics? So the whole curriculum has an agenda if we want to be real. Standardized test. I'll go into it too because we're about to dive into it tonight. Standardized test. You don't think that has an agenda? The curriculum, which is approved by the school board, has an agenda. There are certain things that they put in, and there are certain things that they keep out. Even when it comes to literature, for those who are English teachers, there are certain books that you're supposed to teach that are part of the curriculum, and then there are certain books that should never hit that classroom. So it all has an agenda. It's just whether or not it's the agenda you actually want to hear. So, of course, CNN had this conversation with Nina Turner. I want you to hear this statement from her here. Now, shout out to Case Study QB because he clipped this. Case is always doing the thing. This is part one. So we're going to pay We're going to play part 1 first, and then we're going to dive into part 2. But let's get started with part 1. Here we go. Okay.
Missouri wants to ban critical race theory in schools, even though this is an important part. They want to ban it in schools, and teachers say it's actually not taught in grade schools. So I wonder, why do you think it is that governors and legislators are moving in this way and pushing back against what they are calling a woke curriculum?
Well, it's a dog whistle because it's not taught in K through 12 educational classrooms. We know that critical race theory is primarily taught in law school, and it is a way to look at the legal constructs of this country, that race is a social construct, and that social construct is not just about individual biases or prejudices, that the whole notion of racism is weaved into that. And we know that Professor Kimberly Crenshaw and some others came up with that and primarily taught in law school. So it's a dog whistle, and they are talking to, it just boggles my mind. It seems like conservatives always want to make a false equivalency, and their goal really is they need to come on and tell the truth. Their goal is to erase or diminish the history of Black people and other marginalized populations. Instead, we should be educating, enlightening people, empower people. Let's talk about the structural imbalances in this country and then do something about them. But to say that you don't want these types of curriculum taught in school tells me that you don't want our children to know the truth about America's history, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And it is an affront to the Black community in particular and other marginalized communities in general.
So I just want to add in here something really quick. First and foremost, don't forget to hit the like button. I don't think I've said that tonight. So don't forget to smash that like button, guys. But one thing I want to add in, I think it's important, and Nina she mentioned how conservatives feel about CRT, but I'm going to tell you guys a little secret for those of you who don't live here in Massachusetts. Guess what? Some of the liberals don't want you to teach it either. Just something that you should know. Some of the Democrats, they don't want to talk about it either. They don't want to deal with it.
I want to bring you in here because you and I really bonded in some respects over distance learning during the pandemic and how much more we became involved in our kids' curriculum, as all parents did really, and thought, oh, now I'm really, really paying attention, especially at the grade school level. It's true, it's not taught at the grade school level. But what Nina is talking about in particular, and also with the topics from the AP course, for example, just a little bit, intersectionality and activism is part of it. Black queer studies was part of it, movement for Black lives, Black feminist literary thought, the reparations movement, Black study and Black struggle in the 21st century. These are some of the topics from the AP course in African American studies that Governor DeSantis does not want to be taught in the schools. Do you agree with Nina in the sense that this is a dog whistle and an attempt to erase or whitewash history?
I'm sorry, but I think this is what it's really about. You see this piece right here? Let me make sure I put this back up here. Sorry. You see this item right here, the reparations movement? I think this is what they don't really want you to learn about. Now, we can go through all these intersectionality and activism, Black queer studies, movement for Black lives, Black feminist literary thought, the reparations movement, Black study, and Black struggle in the 21st century. Out of all these items listed here, I think the one that they don't really want you to hear about is the reparations movement. I think that's what they don't want you to talk about in the classroom. But let me go back to this piece here.
But it was interesting that Nina started her answer by saying, well, no one's even talking about this. And then she ended her answer by saying, we should be talking about it. We should be teaching it. Everyone should learn it in school. And so that's where they're headed. Look, I think this is very simple. There are a lot of parents out there who don't want their children taught that because they are white, that they are inherently evil, that they've done something wrong, that they have, oppressed anyone. That's the issue. That's what parents believe has been happening in some of these classes.
Then don't take the course. Because, again, it's an AP course. It is optional. You do not have to take it. And I'm going to be real. Look, I'm about to go old school on you guys. When I was in middle school, they showed us parts of Roots. The miniseries Roots, Alec Haley Roots. I don't think they'll show that to kids today. Some of us grew up, some of us millennials, we grew up with some harsh truths. So they showed us certain parts of the movie Roots, certain parts of the movie The Colored Purple. So if they're complaining about this, that's why I'm saying, like, I don't know. Like, I don't even know, because we saw some things that I know they would never let kids see in school today. I mean, it's just this whole idea that, well, people don't want to be made to feel guilty, but you can still feel guilty when they're talking about slavery or they're talking about the civil rights movement in history class, which those are a part of the history textbooks. So what are you going to do if someone says they feel guilty about that? Then all of a sudden it's like, we're not going to talk about slavery anymore. We're not going to teach the civil rights movement anymore because some people feel it makes them feel guilty. How far are we going to take this? And pay close attention, because this is what I've been trying to warn people about, to pay attention to local politics. So many people focused on who's going to run in 2024. Is Joe Biden going to run again? And focus so much on the national level. And meanwhile, on the local level, you have governors and you have mayors that have actually been imposing harmful laws to their constituents. And most people don't even know about it unless it makes national news. I'm sorry, but people are not paying attention to what's happening with their local politics. And you need to pay attention, because it turns out who you vote for governor, that actually matters.
You know, that's not law school theories. It's just the idea that you would teach one group of children that they are inherently bad, or that our country and the way it was founded and by the people that founded it is inherently rotten at its core. That's what conservative parents are worried about. That's the core of these legislative activities in these states. And I think that's what Desantis is getting at. That's what they're getting at in Missouri and a whole bunch of states out there.
You know, I want to bring you back on that, because the idea of belief is harkening back in that conversation of what people believe is happening, and the idea of almost building off of the assumptions of what it actually means. And I would suggest here, there's also the notion of, as the counter argument, they want to have a bill to, in lieu of critical race theory, which is not being taught in schools, in grade schools, they want to have teacher training on patriotism instead, as if it's really an either or scenario. What's your reaction?
And it's not an either or. So let me get back with Scott, since he want to go there. For years, for decades, for generations in this country, Black children have had to carry inferiority on their backs, in their minds, in their hearts. This country, going back to what John said, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Well, let me tell you a little bit about the bad and the ugly. Chattel slavery was bad and ugly. And to be able to teach African American history in a holistic way, which is America's history. This country has some good, it has some bad, and it has some ugly. And anybody that would fix their mouth, to quote my grandmother, to say that chattel slavery was okay, that the enslavement of Black people was okay, that having separate but unequal was okay, then there is something wrong with them. Number two, Scott, critical race theory is taught in law school. It is not taught in K through 12. However, the point that I was making was about the teaching of African American history itself, which is American history. And to teach that history, you have to teach the whole of it. You can't just teach one part of it. So it's not about making white children feel inferior. This is about teaching history in the broadest way so that people can gain a deeper understanding. And hopefully through that understanding, things can change. I don't see Governor Desantis doing away with AP European history or AP World History. I wonder why that is. Governor DeSantis needs to focus on governing the state and stay out of education and let the educators educate.
So here's the list: AP European History, AP Art History, AP Japanese Language and Culture, AP German Language and Culture, AP Italian Language and Culture, AP Spanish Language and Culture are AP classes currently offered. It's crazy how AP African American Studies made the chopping block in Florida. So see, this is the hypocrisy that is being brought up, that Nina's bringing up here. So everybody needs to see this. So pay close attention to that. Why kick off the AP African American class, but you can leave the other ones there, right? So just that's something you need to pay attention to. Let's go on.
So, Scott, if you and other white people got a problem with the whole of American history being taught, then you're the ones that have the problem. This ain't about making anybody feel inferior, but Brown v. Board of Education was just that, about how generations of black children have been made to feel inferior in these United States of America. And it
Scott,
was founded on racism
Let's get
and
Scott back
bigotry.
in here. Let's get Scott back here, and I want you to respond. What is your reaction, Scott?
Yeah, well, Nina, you ought to be very happy with Governor Desantis, because not only is African-American history under Florida law required to be taught to school children, it has actually been expanded during his governorship. This particular class they don't like because of some of the curriculum points they think is in conflict with Florida law, but it is an absolute state requirement in Florida that they teach African-American history, and it's gotten more expansive since he came in. So you sound upset with me, but the fact is, Governor DeSantis,
Scott, right?
I mean, you say
the way he wants to talk.
No, he's not writing the
party
curriculum.
of free
He's not writing the
speech is taking away people's speech.
Excuse me. Yes, no one can.
So here's something I just want to point out here, you guys. They've said multiple times it's not taught in K through 12, but the whole argument here is over it being taught in K through 12. Just something that I want to point out. Again, AP courses are not required. It is a choice. It's an option. If you don't want to take the class, you don't have to take the class. If you want to take the class, you have the option to take it. And I think for me, it's just, let's go on.
No,
he's
wait,
not, he's not writing the curriculum.
Excuse me.
I'm just telling you the facts.
Hello, Television 101. No one can hear you when you talk over each other. So let's just go back to, I want to hear your response, Scott, and I'll allow you to speak. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll just wrap up and say, you know, the governor of the state is not writing the curriculum. I'm just telling you the facts. School children learn African-American history in Florida, and it's gotten more expansive on his watch. So you say you want it taught. It is being taught. I think you're upset about this class, but holistically speaking, they're getting a really good education in Florida about African-American history in the United States.
John,
I'm not upset about this class, Scott. I'm upset with the fact that you said that white children are somehow going to feel inferior if all of African American history is taught. So I wanted to have this conversation with you about inferiority and who has been made to feel inferior in the United States of America.
100%. That is absolutely 100% not what I said. I said that parents are concerned.
Let's roll the tape, baby.
That children are walking into classrooms.
We can roll the tape.
No, I
didn't say that.
Nina,
no, I didn't.
Nina,
I said,
I'd like it. Hold on.
I did not.
Wait.
Okay, the talking over each other, I don't like. So I'm moving on to the second part, because when they start talking over each other, it's hard to hear who's saying what. So part two, because they do finish this conversation here. Put this here. All right, let's pick up from here.
Missouri wants to ban critical race theory in schools. Even though this is an important part, they want to ban it in schools, and teachers say it's actually not taught in grade schools. So I wonder, why do you think?
Wait a minute. Why is this the same? Should be a second part here. Oh, here we go. Sorry. Whoopsies. Here we go.
Back now with Nina Turner, Scott Jennings, and John Avalon, who also has an opinion piece on CNN.com saying the word police are doing more harm than good. We're going to come back to that point in just a moment, but I do want Scott to have a chance to respond. I know that you had a statement you wanted to make as well.
Yeah, I just wanted to respond to Nina. I absolutely, under no circumstances, said that children should be taught that slavery didn't happen or that it was somehow good or whatever it is you attributed to me. In fact, I don't think there's a school in America that isn't teaching about the United States of America, how it's founded, what happened, the wars we fought, how we atoned for it.
They don't teach the whole story, though, dude. They don't teach the whole story. And that's all of the history that is taught in this. They don't teach the whole story. Listen, people were still teaching that Christopher Columbus discovered America. People were still teaching that. So they don't teach the whole, even when they teach you about the Pilgrims. And yeah, they broke bread with indigenous people, and that's how we got Thanksgiving. They don't tell you about everything that happened before that. They don't tell you about how they slaughtered the indigenous people. They don't tell you about that part. Even when we talk about slavery, they whitewash slavery. They don't tell you. If you knew the truth, you would be appalled. They don't tell you what they did to the women, what they did to the men. Some things I can't say on here, what they did to the children. They don't tell you the full true story. That's the thing about history in this country. It's just not, it's whitewashed. Let's put it that way. They put it in a way so that it's easier to digest.
Progress we've made. I think that's being taught in probably every school in America. Where parents really have an issue, and you can talk to a lot of parents about it, is if teachers are telling one group of students, this is somehow your fault. You're somehow inferior, or you're somehow bad, or you somehow caused harm or pain to this other child. These are very sensitive topics, and to be talking to students at an extremely young age about that, I mean, I think it sounds like college debates to me, but to be talking to school-age kids about that, that's what has parents concerned, and it's why you see these legislators dealing with it at the state level.
Yeah.
But you can't protect. So this is the thing. It's just, it's like parents today, and not all of them, but there seems to be this recurring theme with parents today, where it's like they want to protect the kids from everything. Like, I don't want my kid to feel bad. I don't want my kid to have to deal with obstacles. So I'm going to be a lawnmower parent. I'm going to mow those obstacles out of their way. I don't want my kid to have to encounter challenges. Like some of the things that I've heard from the parents, I'm just like, you can't parent your child the whole life. You can't. When your child eventually becomes an adult, they're going to have to deal with challenges. They're going to have to deal with, obstacles. These kids are going to have to deal with the fact that someone is going to say something to them one day, and it's going to make them feel bad. Nowadays, it's just, you can't say anything anymore. You can't, certain things you can't watch. Everything is just so tone policed, and it drives me crazy. We can talk about that on Call In tonight too. It's so extreme now. I'm sorry, but I'm a millennial, and we said a lot of things and we did a lot of things that you can't even say today.
Interestingly enough, and John, I want to bring you in here as well, and Nina, interestingly enough, I don't know of a lesson that actually does that precise notion where they are telling and singling out students to say, you are the problem, you are bad. I mean, there's a Taylor Swift song of, hi, I'm the problem, it's me. They may be citing that lyric, but that's not what's happening in many classrooms. But John, on this point, why is this perception not held when we learn, say, about the suffrage movement and women voting? I rarely hear an argument that someone makes about men collectively as a gender feeling as though they're alienated and targeted when we talk about women's rights in this country. Why do you think the element of race, John, inserts a very different dynamic and nuance that has conversations like this?
She actually kind of answered her own question, maybe not realizing that she was answering that question. When she brings up the women's suffrage movement and she says, why doesn't that make like men feel guilty the same way it does when you bring up like the concept of race? Well, you have to remember who was a part of the women's suffrage movement. The women's suffrage movement was white women. It was not black women. So when she mentions the race element, that's why I said she kind of answered her own question in a way. When she mentions the racial element, the women's suffrage movement is still centered in the white community. That was white women that did that movement. When you're talking about something like slavery, you're talking about like civil rights, this is different. This is different. So I think we have to keep that in mind, because I've seen people make that comparison before about the women's suffrage movement. That was a movement with white women. So even when you think about the racial aspect, it was still something that was a part of European culture, because that was something that white people did that was good, not something that white people did that was bad. We're going to move on to Nina. Oh, no, let him say what he's going to say. Then I'll move on to what she said.
Well, Laura, that's because the original sin of slavery is a stain that spreads through American history. And you can't understand American history or American political history without dealing with race. It's a fundamental fault line. And it's not just Brown v. Board. I mean, up until, the mid 60s, there were, a lot of schools that whitewashed slavery. And didn't want to deal with the civil rights movement. Now we've got a more integrated understanding of American history being taught. Some folks, that makes folks feel uncomfortable. Some folks on the left would reduce it to identity politics tropes that, take it too far. And by the way, I do think we should be teaching civics education, and I don't think there's anything remotely right-wing about that. We need to return to liberal values and a sense of shared civics.
I grew up thinking that everybody had to take civics. Like, I had to take civics. It was required at my high school. You had to take it your freshman year. And then as I got older, like when I went to college, I realized my friends didn't have to take civics. So I had to take it. We had like mock debates and everything, like when I was in high school. Granted, I was part of the debate team, but in my civics class, we had a mock debate. There were some of us in the class that were a part of the jury. There was the defense, there was the prosecutor. So we had like the whole, I remember that was like really fun. I remember that, thinking back on that, but it did hit me when I went to college that not everyone was required to take civics. And so I think that explains a lot of things as to why some people just don't understand how the government works in this country.
But it's when the extremes hijack these debates and run roughshod over any liberal values or allegations of free speech that things start getting balkanized again. And you have to understand it in the context of American history. So when there is this intense pushback on the teaching of a more integrated view of American history, you got to understand it in the context of American history. And that's why folks should be right to say, hold on, you're resurrecting some ugly old ghosts that we saw play out at different periods in American history. We need to understand those history in order to transcend it ultimately.
You have a piece on CNN.com to the point about the idea of white.
Let's get to the piece here that Nina says. So this is also I don't want to get into the Latinx thing. It's like I said, it's like, I thought there was one more thing that Nina said here. I could be wrong. Okay, let's do that part. Sorries. It's just, you don't know what to say these days. Here we go. Don't do this to me, Twitter. These Twitter videos sometimes, man. Let me come back in. But I appreciate Case Study QB for capturing this, because I really don't have the patience to sit down and do all of this. Like, I just don't.
.com saying the word police.
We're not banning it, but actually the elimination of horrible language initiative was.
I was trying to get to the Nina part.
Americans walking on eggshells around each other.
Nina, what's your reaction to that?
I mean, there's some false equivalencies here, but as far as Governor Huckabee is concerned, Arkansas is one of the poorest states, one of the worst states when it comes to childhood poverty rates. And Governor Huckabee needs to be worried about poverty in her state and let the English teachers worry about vocabulary and get to work doing the things that the people of that state elected her to do. Lastly, Laura, I just cannot sit here and allow Scott to get away with what he just said. Malcolm X, I clearly remember in reading the autobiography of Malcolm X when he talked about being in class and his white male teacher asked everybody in the classroom, Malcolm X was the only black person in that classroom, this ain't ancient history, asked them what they wanted to be when they grew up. And when he told his teacher he wanted to be a lawyer, his teacher told him to be realistic about being an N-word in America. So do not sit here and act like America has totally atoned, because it has not totally atoned for its original sin. And why can't we just have that conversation? As far as the word police, I agree. A lot of these people have too much time on their hands worrying about that kind of stuff. That's not where it is. How do we help people live better and richer, more enriched lives? That should be the major point here.
Scott?
I'm going to go ahead and end it there, because for sake of time, because I still, I want to make sure I start calling at a decent amount of time. I went over time a little bit. But thank you for the super chat. Colin said, you watch Roots at school. My dad made me watch Roots when I was 10 at home. Yes, we didn't watch the entire miniseries at school, but there were certain parts of it that my teacher did show us at school. Yeah. I don't know. I could be wrong, but I don't think teachers could get away with that today. I'm just saying. Things are a little bit different. All right. I am going to take a quick break before we jump into call-in. you know how we do it. We talk about, I have a main topic, which is the one about the tone policing and civility politics, but we also can discuss other stories that were mentioned here tonight. But let me just take a quick little break and I'll be back and we'll head on over to Colin.
All right. This is the time of the show where we give Sabby a little break before we're heading over to Colin. Let's see. I'll put the Colin link in the chat. So if you want to get a head start on it, you can do Colin either by hitting that link and bring it up on your browser. You can just listen or you can participate. Or you can do Colin on your smartphone and install the app on your smartphone and do it from there. And that's where we want to hear from you all. All right, we got a good chunk of chats and super chats built up. Let's see what we got. I like this one from Observer saying DeSantis is spending his time between signing death warrants and studying the curriculum of AP courses for historical accuracy. Yeah, to me that's one of the real problems here is like who decides, what's proper and improper in the curriculum. I mean, there's whole systems in place to deal with this already, and why do we need a governor stepping in? Let's see, we got Betsy saying, oh yeah, I wanted to throw this one up to mention it. Betsy saying she's hoping to find some MA peeps, Massachusetts peeps, to travel down to DC with her for the anti-war rally on the 19th. So if you're a Massachusetts person and want to work on a transportation with Betsy, get in touch with her or get in touch with us or get on the call-in or something like that. From Angela. She said, I had a history teacher in high school who did not teach from the book. He had to fight to teach us actual history. My appreciation of it comes from his determination to get it right. And I was struck by that one because, of course, a really good teacher is really heroic and can be really special in someone's life. So big shout out to those really special teachers. From Simone, exactly. They mentioned Malcolm X as violent and militant after mentioning his dad was possibly deleted by K members. And then this one from Observer I thought was spot on. Yeah, CRT just means talking too much about black people. I think that's about right. Let's see, we got a new super chat coming in. We don't want to miss that one. There we go. We'll tag that for a minute. From Colin. I wonder how DeSantis feels about teachers teaching the Holocaust. And I hope Mr. Colin will be on call-in with us tonight. And thanks for the super chat, Pan American. Everybody knows about slavery. This is an agenda. Thanks for the super chat. And this one from Lisa saying, Sabby, if black children can experience racism, then all the others can learn about it. And that was a pretty based comment. And this super chat from Pan-Africanism, CRT is not needed. More victim mindset being injected into our community. It's tiring and depressing. These people couldn't care less about slavery. Thanks for that super chat. From Simone saying they don't want their children being curious about it. Yep. And thanks for the super chat from A Long Story Short. Nina is wrong. CRT is a poison and you know it. This is gaslighting. And thanks for this super chat from Dre Harding. Nina isn't addressing the difference in the Asian, whites, Hispanic, and African American curriculum. Only one features social engineering. Guess which? Thanks for that. And Pan-Africanism said, I don't see AP European American history. And I think Wari Pilgrim responded to that saying, well, because that's the default. But thanks for the super chat. And thanks for this one. Long story short, please send a link to Brandon. And then Delthea came in and said, with this super chat, see, now I must do Colin tonight. This whole CRT mess. I got something to say, so we can look forward to that from Ms. Delthea in Colin. And Pan-Africanism with the super chat says, Sabs, why you want to burden out children with that? Thanks for that super chat. And one more from Pan-Africanism. Why don't we fight this hard to put trades back in schools? That would actually help marginalized groups. Nina Turner benefits from identity politics. And thanks for that super chat. I mean, the main thing that occurred to me about the whole CRT conversation is it's also a big distraction. At least that's why the right wingers push it. And of course, then when they're trying to cut stuff out of the curriculum, then it has to be defended against and whatnot. But the biggest purpose is just it's a safe fight to have. It's a fight you can have, and then you're not talking about the billionaires. And that's the thing they always want. They want you talking. They want the peasants fighting about all these other things, and not about the economic issues and those kind of things. Now, before we get beyond this and into Colin, I do have actually a little announcement to make. I gotta find my graphic. But this Friday, here it is. After the Sabby show on Friday, I am going to host on my channel a forum that I'm calling Forum 11. And it's going to be hosted by myself and by my man Corey, and it's going to, and for the panelists, we're going to have, of course, Miss Sabby Sabs herself. We're going to have Lucy, who all of a sudden has been in the news and all over the place. I heard even that Glenn Greenwald featured a video tonight. I heard a chatter said that. I assume it's true. We are going to have Courtney Banks. We would add both Banks sisters, but one is traveling. But one Banks sister is good. We are going to have Colin, who hopefully we'll hear later on Colin. And we're going to have Reef Breland. And we may even have some other people dropping in. But that's going to go after the Sabby show this Friday on the 27th. And hearing more about that, hopefully, and that should be interesting. It's going to be about the demands and that kind of thing. It's also going to be a fun Friday handout, a fun Friday hangout. Hopefully, I'll be talking better than this on Friday, right?
Yes,
All right.
yes, that'll be solutions based. So definitely, we'll do that. Yeah, right after my stream on Friday, we'll pivot right over to there. So looking forward to that.
See you there. See you on Colin.
That's right. Guys, don't forget, we do have Glenn Greenwald's coming on this week, and so is Claire Daly. So I'm looking forward to that. Those will be different times, but I'll notify you guys when that comes. That'll be Thursday and Friday. So I have a lot of things to ask both of them. They're two different interviews, but I have a lot of questions. A lot of questions. All right, we are going to pivot over to call in. So tonight's segment is episode 74. AOC and civility politics. So we're going to talk about this. Activist and comrade Lucy, along with others, confronted AOC on Saturday at her town hall in the Bronx. Robbie and Batya from the Hills Rising discussed the need to be more civil to politicians, even when you disagree with them. Is there a certain amount of gatekeeping and tone policing on the left? Why or why not? And of course, you can always, Eric, I'm trying to get back to the original screen. You can always discuss other topics that we talked about tonight as well. Feel free to do so. So yeah, I'm super pumped. Should have a pretty good discussion. We're doing pretty well over there on Call-In. So I'm super, pumped about that. So join me over there. If you don't have the app or you don't want to download the app, you can also listen on your computer as well. You can also call in from your computer. So that was a new feature that they added a while back. So let's go ahead and scoot our little butts over to call in. Thank you for this tip, JVB. Thanks for this real journalism / analysis. You are golden, Sabby. Thank you so much, JVB. I appreciate that. So we're going to go ahead and scoot our little butts over to call in. The link is pinned to the top of the chat, so you should be able to see that there. And you guys know how we do this. Have a good night. Keep up the fight.